A lonely billionaire tells a woman beaten for being ugly, "I'll change your life." And in that moment, everything she thought she knew about herself shatters. This quiet woman, hurt her whole life for how she looks, suddenly finds the world watching her, and the man who saved her refusing to walk away. But when her past comes back, louder, darker, and more dangerous than ever, she's forced into a fight she never asked for. Because someone out there wants to drag her back into the shadows, just when she's finally stepping into the light. And the billionaire? He's hiding a loneliness so deep, even money can't fix it. But something about her is waking him up. When the world calls her ugly, and one man says she's worth everything, whose voice will she believe? And what happens when the truth finally comes for them both? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. And if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The humid evening air clung to Naomi's skin as she pushed through the heavy glass door of Lou's diner, her feet aching after another long shift. The neon sign above cast a tired red glow across the half-empty parking lot. She'd worked doubles all week, and her body felt every extra hour. Her worn sneakers scuffed against the cracked asphalt as she walked toward her old Toyota Corolla, parked beneath one of the few working streetlights. The familiar jingle of her keys offered small comfort in the growing darkness. Around her, crickets chirped their evening song, while occasional cars whooshed past on the main road, their headlights briefly illuminating the lot before fading away. "Been waiting for you?" The rough voice sent ice through her veins. Marcus. She'd know that slurred speech anywhere. He emerged from between two parked cars, swaying slightly. Even from several feet away, she could smell the alcohol on him. His usually neat, button-down shirt was wrinkled and half untucked, his eyes glazed with anger and drink. "Marcus, please," Naomi said softly, taking a step back. "You're not supposed to be here. Saw you talking to that guy at table 12. His words ran together. Smiling at him, batting your eyes. "He's a regular customer, Marcus. That's my job." Her fingers tightened around her keys, heart hammering against her ribs. "I need to go home now. You think I'm stupid." He moved closer, blocking her path to her car. "You think I don't see what's going on? Always trying to get attention from other men." "That's not true." Her voice trembled despite her effort to stay calm. "I just want to go home." She tried to step around him, but he grabbed her arm, fingers digging into her flesh. "Don't walk away from me when I'm talking to you." "Let go!" The keys fell from her shaking hands, clattering on the pavement. "You worthless piece of—" His fist connected with her cheekbone before she could react. Pain exploded across her face as she stumbled backward, losing her balance. The ground rushed up to meet her, rough asphalt scraping her palms as she tried to break her fall. "You're nothing but an ugly, worthless—" Each word felt like another blow as Marcus towered over her. Cars continued passing on the main road, their drivers perhaps seeing but choosing not to get involved. Naomi's vision blurred with tears, her cheek throbbing. Suddenly, bright headlights swept across the parking lot as a black SUV screeched to a halt nearby. The driver's door flew open, and a tall figure emerged, moving with swift purpose. "Get away from her!" The voice was firm but controlled, carrying natural authority. Marcus spun around, nearly losing his balance. "Mind your own business!" The newcomer, a well-dressed man with kind eyes, positioned himself between Naomi and Marcus. "This is my business now. Step back." "Who do you think you are?" Marcus lurched forward aggressively, but the stranger stood his ground. "Gabriel Stone, and I'm calling the police." He already had his phone out, his other hand extended protectively toward Naomi. The name sparked recognition in her mind. She'd seen him in the local news, a billionaire known for his charitable work. Marcus lunged, but Stone smoothly sidestepped, using Marcus's own momentum to push him away from Naomi. He spoke clearly into the phone. "Yes, I need police at Lou's Diner on Highway 35. Domestic assault in progress." More cars were stopping now, their headlights creating a chaotic dance of shadows across the scene. Marcus, realizing he was outnumbered, backed away, but continued shouting threats and obscenities. Within minutes, police sirens wailed in the distance. 2 patrol cars pulled into the lot, their red and blue lights painting everything in alternating colors. Officer Dean Walker, a veteran cop Naomi recognized from his regular coffee stops at the diner, took immediate control of the situation. "Mr. Reed," Officer Walker said, his voice stern but professional as he approached Marcus. "We've talked about this before." He quickly cuffed Marcus, who had shifted from rage to sullen resistance. While his partner secured Marcus in the patrol car, Officer Walker turned to Naomi, his expression softening with concern. "Ms. Bridges, are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" She touched her cheek, wincing at the tenderness. Her hands were scraped raw, and her whole body shook with delayed shock. I don't know. You should get checked out," Gabriel Stone said gently. "I can drive you to the emergency room." Officer Walker nodded in agreement. "That's a good idea. We'll need your statement, but it can wait until you've been seen by a doctor. Mr. Stone, you'll need to provide a witness statement as well." "Of course," Gabriel replied, then turned to Naomi. "Will you let me help?" Something in his quiet manner, the careful way he maintained a respectful distance while offering assistance, made Naomi feel safe, enough to accept. She nodded, and he helped her to her feet, steadying her when she swayed slightly. The ride to the hospital was silent but not uncomfortable. Gabriel's SUV smelled of leather and subtle cologne, and he drove smoothly, careful not to jostle her. At every stoplight, he glanced over, checking on her without being intrusive. The emergency room was surprisingly quiet for a Friday night. Gabriel spoke softly to the intake nurse, and Naomi found herself quickly escorted to a curtained examination area. The fluorescent lights seemed harsh after the evening darkness, making her feel exposed and vulnerable as she perched on the edge of the hospital bed. "Would you like me to wait outside?" Gabriel asked, standing near the curtain. Naomi surprised herself by saying, "No, please stay." The thought of being alone made her chest tight with anxiety. He settled into the chair beside her bed, his presence somehow both protective and unobtrusive. The doctor came and went, documenting her injuries, providing ice for her face, and cleaning the scrapes on her hands. Through it all, Gabriel remained a steady, calming presence. "I keep thinking this is just a bad dream," Naomi whispered, staring at her bandaged hands. "That I'll wake up and none of this will have happened." "What happened tonight wasn't your fault," Gabriel said, his voice gentle but firm. "And this isn't the end of your story." She looked up at him then, really seeing him for the first time, the compassion in his eyes, the quiet strength in his bearing. Despite everything, she felt a small spark of hope. Maybe he was right. Maybe this wasn't the end, but a beginning. The hospital room fell into silence, broken only by the soft beeping of distant monitors and the muffled sounds of activity in the hallway. For the first time since Marcus had appeared in the parking lot, Naomi felt her breathing begin to steady, the tight knot of fear in her chest starting to loosen, if only slightly. Through the window, she could see the first hints of dawn beginning to paint the sky, a reminder that even the darkest nights eventually give way to morning. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the hospital parking lot as Gabriel helped Naomi into his SUV. Her face was a canvas of purple and blue, with 3 neat stitches above her left eyebrow. Every movement reminded her of the previous night's violence, her body stiff and aching. The drive was quiet at first, broken only by Naomi's soft directions to her apartment complex on the east side of town. Gabriel navigated through the morning traffic with careful precision, taking extra care over speed bumps and around corners to avoid jostling his injured passenger. As they passed through a residential area, Gabriel cleared his throat softly. "I hope you don't mind me saying this," he began, his voice gentle. "But I recognize the look in your eyes. I've seen it hundreds of times before." Naomi turned slightly toward him, wincing as the movement pulled at her sore muscles. "What do you mean?" "Through my foundation, the Stone Foundation for Women's Empowerment. I've worked with many women who've been through similar situations." He paused at a red light, his hands resting easily on the steering wheel. "We provide support services, job training, legal aid, and most importantly, a chance to rebuild." Naomi's fingers twisted in her lap, her bandaged hands a stark reminder of the previous night. That's very kind of you to share," she managed to say. "I'll be direct, Naomi," Gabriel continued, his tone remaining gentle, but taking on a note of purpose. "I'll change your life if you let me. We have an opening for a peer counselor at the foundation, someone who understands firsthand what our clients are going through. Your story, your experience, it could help so many others." The suggestion hit Naomi like a physical blow. Her chest tightened, and she found herself struggling to breathe normally. Help others? She could barely help herself. The idea that she might have something valuable to offer seemed absurd. I couldn't possibly," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just a waitress. I don't have any qualifications. I'm not—" She swallowed hard, Marcus's words echoing in her head. Worthless, ugly, nothing. "I'm not the kind of person who could do that kind of work." Gabriel pulled up in front of her apartment building, a tired 3-story complex with peeling paint and rusty railings. He turned in his seat to face her, his expression earnest. "You're exactly the kind of person we need. Someone with empathy, someone who understands." "Please," Naomi cut him off, her voice trembling. "I appreciate everything you've done, more than I can say. But I just want my normal life back. I just want to forget this happened." She reached for the door handle, her movements hurried despite the pain. "At least take my card," Gabriel said, holding out a simple white business card. "When you're ready, if you're ever ready, call me, day or night." Naomi took the card without looking at it, mumbled a thank you, and carefully made her way up the worn concrete steps to her first-floor apartment. Only when she heard the SUV pull away did she let out the breath she'd been holding. Inside her small apartment, Naomi moved like a ghost through her familiar spaces. She pulled all the blinds closed, double-checked the locks on her door, and filled a plastic bag with ice for her face. The morning light filtered through the cheap vinyl blinds, creating striped shadows that reminded her of prison bars. She spent the afternoon curled up on her second-hand couch, alternatively dozing and starting at every sound from the parking lot. What if Marcus made bail? What if he came looking for her? The thought made her stomach clench with fear. By 4 o'clock, she forced herself to get ready for her evening shift at the diner. She couldn't afford to miss work, and maybe the routine would help her feel normal again. In the bathroom mirror, she attempted to cover the worst of the bruising with makeup, but the results were barely adequate. The stitches above her eyebrows stood out starkly against her dark skin, impossible to disguise. The familiar walk to the diner felt different now. Every shadow seemed threatening, every passing car a potential danger. The diner's neon sign buzzed overhead as she slipped in through the back door, hoping to avoid attention. "Oh, honey," Sophie, the other evening waitress, breathed when she saw Naomi. "Should you really be here?" "I'm fine," Naomi insisted, tying on her apron with shaking hands. I need to work." But it wasn't fine. Throughout her shift, she felt the weight of stares from customers and co-workers alike. Conversations would stop when she approached tables, only to resume in whispers as she walked away. Even regular customers who normally chatted with her seemed uncertain how to act, their discomfort obvious in their averted eyes and too careful speech. Around 8 o'clock, a teenage girl at one of her tables called out softly, "Miss?" When Naomi approached, the girl, she couldn't have been more than 16, held out her phone with trembling hands. Is this you?" Naomi's heart stopped as she looked at the screen. There it was, shaky cell phone footage of the previous night's attack, captured from a passing car. She watched in horror as Marcus threw her to the ground, as Gabriel's SUV screeched to a halt, as the scene played out in grainy, viral infamy. The video had thousands of views already, hundreds of comments. The phone slipped from her numb fingers, clattering onto the table. The girl quickly grabbed it, her eyes wide with concern and embarrassment. Around them, the diner's usual dinner rush sounds continued. Clinking silverware, sizzling grills, murmured conversations. But to Naomi, it all seemed to fade into a distant roar. Her normal life, the one she'd so desperately wanted to return to just hours ago, was slipping away like water through her fingers. The entire world had witnessed her moment of greatest vulnerability, and there was nothing she could do to take it back. The harsh buzzing of her phone dragged Naomi from a fitful sleep. Sunlight streamed through gaps in her blinds, creating warm patches on her worn carpet. Her whole body ached, the bruises from Friday night having settled into a deep, throbbing pain. The phone continued its insistent vibration, skittering across her nightstand. 28 missed calls, 47 text messages. Naomi's hands trembled as she scrolled through them, most from her co-workers at the diner. The messages blurred together in a panic-inducing stream. "OMG, have you seen the news? They're talking about you on Good Morning America. Are you okay? Call me. There are reporters everywhere." Her phone buzzed again, her manager, Linda. Naomi answered with a dry throat. "Hello? Naomi, honey, I don't want you coming in today." Linda's voice was tight with concern. "There must be a dozen news vans outside the diner. They're asking everyone about you. I've had to lock the doors to keep them from coming inside." "News vans?" Naomi's voice came out as a whisper. "Why would they—" "The video, sweetie. It's everywhere. People are calling you a survivor, saying you're brave for standing up to domestic violence. But these reporters, they're like vultures. Just stay home today, okay? Stay safe." After hanging up, Naomi pulled her curtains tighter and huddled on her couch, wrapping herself in a blanket despite the warm morning. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications, but she couldn't bear to look at them anymore. The thought of strangers watching her most vulnerable moment, discussing it on national television, made her feel sick to her stomach. Hours passed in a fog of anxiety and disbelief. She jumped at every sound from the parking lot, terrified that reporters might have found her address. Around 11 o'clock, a gentle knock at her door made her freeze. "Naomi?" Gabriel Stone's soft voice carried through the door. "It's Gabriel. I saw the video circulating. I wanted to check on you." She hesitated, then slowly approached the door. Through the peephole, she could see Gabriel standing alone, his usual confident posture somewhat uncertain. He held a tablet in one hand and wore casual weekend clothes, jeans and a light blue button-down shirt that made him look more approachable than his usual business attire. Naomi opened the door just enough to see him properly. "How did you know where I live?" "I remembered from dropping you off yesterday," he said, maintaining a respectful distance. "May I come in? I think you should see something." After another moment's hesitation, she stepped back to let him enter. Gabriel took in her small apartment with kind eyes, showing no judgment at the mismatched furniture or worn carpet. "I know you're probably feeling overwhelmed and exposed right now," he said, gesturing to her couch. "May I sit?" Naomi nodded, perching nervously on the other end of the couch as Gabriel settled himself and opened his tablet. "I want to show you how people are actually responding to the video." He pulled up a social media feed and began scrolling through comments. Instead of the cruel remarks she'd feared, Naomi saw message after message of support. "This woman is so brave. Watching her stand up to him gave me courage. I left my abusive boyfriend after seeing this. Thank you for showing me I'm not alone. She's beautiful and strong. That man couldn't break her spirit." Tears welled up in Naomi's eyes as she read more comments. For years, she'd believed Marcus's cruel words about her being worthless and ugly. Now thousands of strangers were saying the opposite, calling her brave, beautiful, inspiring. Her voice caught in her throat. Something broke inside her, a dam she'd built years ago to hold back her tears. They came now in great, heaving sobs that shook her entire body. Gabriel quietly handed her a handkerchief, giving her space to release years of pent-up emotion. He didn't try to touch her or offer empty comfort, just sat in supportive silence until her tears began to slow. "I haven't cried in so long," she finally whispered, wiping her eyes. "Marcus said crying was weak. I started believing him." "Nothing about you is weak, Naomi," Gabriel said firmly. "Would you like to get some coffee? There's a small place around the corner. We can avoid the reporters and maybe talk about what comes next." 20 minutes later, they sat in a quiet corner of a nearby coffee shop. Naomi wrapped her hands around a warm mug of tea, letting the heat seep into her cold fingers. The cafe was nearly empty, just a few regulars absorbed in their laptops or books. "I know you wanted your normal life back," Gabriel said gently, stirring his coffee. "But sometimes life has other plans for us. These women seeing your video, they're finding hope in your story. You have an opportunity to help people in a way few others can." Naomi shook her head, staring into her tea. "I'm nobody special. I can't be some kind of spokesperson. I'm just trying to survive." "That's exactly why you'd be perfect for the foundation," Gabriel insisted, his voice remaining soft and encouraging. "You understand what these women are going through because you've lived it. You don't need to be a spokesperson. Just be yourself, sharing your story with others who need to hear it." "I don't want to be in the spotlight," Naomi said firmly, but her voice held less conviction than before. Gabriel nodded, understanding. "Would you at least come see the foundation office, just to look around? No commitment, no pressure. Just see what we do there." Naomi took a long sip of tea, considering. The warmth of the cafe, the quiet conversation, and the release of tears had left her feeling more centered than she had since the attack. Maybe seeing the foundation wouldn't hurt. Maybe there was a reason all this was happening. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll come look. Tomorrow morning?" "Tomorrow morning?" Gabriel agreed with a gentle smile. "I'll pick you up at 9 o'clock. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions churning inside Naomi as she waited by her apartment window. At precisely 9 o'clock, Gabriel's black SUV pulled up to the curb. Naomi took a deep breath, smoothed her modest navy dress, and walked outside. Gabriel stepped out to greet her, dressed in a light grey suit that somehow made him look both professional and approachable. "Good morning, Naomi. Ready to see what we do?" She nodded, sliding into the passenger seat. The leather interior smelled new, and classical music played softly from the speakers. As they drove, Gabriel pointed out landmarks, keeping the conversation light and easy. "The foundation started small," he explained, turning onto a tree-lined street. Just a few rooms in an office building. But as more women came forward needing help, we knew we needed a bigger space. They pulled up to a restored brick warehouse that managed to look both impressive and welcoming. Large windows let in plenty of natural light, and flowering plants decorated the entrance. A tasteful sign read, "Stone Foundation for Women's Empowerment." Inside, the space opened into a bright lobby with comfortable seating areas and artwork created by survivors. The receptionist, a woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, smiled warmly at Naomi. "Welcome to the foundation. We're so glad you're here." Gabriel led Naomi past several small meeting rooms where women sat talking quietly with counselors. The atmosphere felt peaceful, nothing like the cold office building she'd imagined. "This is our main gathering space," Gabriel explained, showing her into a large room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Comfortable couches and chairs were arranged in conversation groups, and a small kitchen area offered coffee and snacks. "We host support groups here, skill-building workshops, and sometimes just informal get-togethers." A tall black woman in her mid-50s approached them, radiating warmth and quiet authority. Her grey-streaked hair was styled in neat twists, and she wore a flowing turquoise dress that seemed to move with her graceful steps. "Naomi, I'd like you to meet Dr. Laverne Holt, our lead therapist and program director," Gabriel said. "Please just call me Laverne," she said, taking Naomi's hand in both of hers. Her touch was gentle but grounding. "I'm so glad you're here with us today." Something about Laverne's presence made Naomi's shoulders relax slightly. The older woman guided her to a quiet corner with comfortable chairs, while Gabriel excused himself to take a phone call. "How are you holding up, dear?" Laverne asked, her voice rich with genuine concern. "The past few days must have been overwhelming." Naomi twisted her hands in her lap. I don't know. Everything happened so fast. The video, all those people watching. It's a lot to process." Laverne nodded, understanding. "But you know what I see when I look at you? I see strength, not just in how you handled that terrible moment, but in how you're still standing, still moving forward." Throughout the morning, Laverne showed Naomi around the facility, explaining their various programs. They had legal advocates who helped women navigate restraining orders and divorce proceedings, career counselors who assisted with job training and placement, and trauma-informed therapists who provided both individual and group counseling. As they walked, staff members approached to introduce themselves. Each one spoke to Naomi with genuine respect and admiration, but never in a way that made her feel like a spectacle. "Your story really touched us all," one counselor said quietly. "The way you stood your ground, even when he tried to diminish you. That's exactly what we try to help our clients find within themselves." By early afternoon, Gabriel rejoined them in the staff break room, where they shared a simple lunch. Naomi found herself relaxing more with each passing hour, drawn in by the foundation's atmosphere of healing and hope. "What do you think so far?" Gabriel asked, his voice gentle and free of pressure. Naomi considered carefully before answering. "I like it here. It feels safe, peaceful, but I still don't want to be out front, speaking to groups or anything like that. I couldn't handle that kind of attention." "We would never ask you to do anything you're not comfortable with," Laverne assured her. "There are many ways to help behind the scenes." Gabriel nodded agreement. "Actually, we have an administrative position open that I think would be perfect for you. You'd help coordinate appointments, maintain client files, and assist the staff with whatever they need. It's quiet work, but essential to keeping everything running smoothly." "And you'd be part of our family here," Laverne added warmly. "No pressure to share more of your story than you choose to." Naomi felt something stir inside her, a tiny spark of hope, perhaps. The idea of working in this peaceful place, helping others find healing, even in a small way, appealed to her deeply. But the thought of such a big change still frightened her. "Could I have one night to think about it?" she asked hesitantly. "Of course," Gabriel said immediately. "Take all the time you need. Would you like me to drive you home?" The sun was setting as they pulled up to Naomi's apartment building. The day had left her feeling both exhausted and oddly energized, her mind full of possibilities she hadn't dared consider before. "Thank you," she said sincerely, as Gabriel walked her to her door. "For everything. Thank you for giving us a chance," he replied with a gentle smile. "I'll wait to hear from you tomorrow." Naomi watched him walk away, then turned to unlock her door. Her key slid in easily, too easily. With a chill of fear, she realized the door was already slightly ajar. Her heart began to race as scenarios flashed through her mind. Had Marcus found her? Was he waiting inside? With trembling fingers, she pulled out her phone and called Gabriel's number. "Hello?" His voice answered on the first ring. "Gabriel," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Please come back. My door. Someone's been in my apartment." Gabriel's footsteps pounded against the pavement as he raced back to Naomi's building. His heart hammered in his chest, not from the exertion but from fear for her safety. He found her exactly where he'd left her, pressed against the wall beside her door, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "I'm here," he said softly, trying not to startle her. "Stay behind me while I check inside." Naomi nodded, her whole body trembling. Gabriel pushed the door open slowly, reaching for the light switch. The apartment was eerily quiet, but something felt wrong. Papers were scattered across the floor, and a few picture frames hung crooked on the walls. "Hello?" Gabriel called out firmly. "Anyone here?" They were met with silence. He moved methodically through the small apartment, checking the living room, kitchen, and bedroom. No one was there, but the invasion of Naomi's space was evident everywhere he looked. When he reached the bathroom, his jaw clenched. The mirror had been smashed, creating a spiderweb of cracks across its surface. Below it, on the counter, lay Naomi's childhood Bible, its pages ripped and scattered across the tile floor. "Oh, God," Naomi whispered from behind him. She'd followed despite his instructions to wait by the door. Her hands flew to her mouth as she took in the destruction. "That was my grandmother's Bible." Gabriel pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police." While they waited for law enforcement to arrive, Naomi sank onto her couch, looking small and lost. Gabriel noticed more details of the intruder's presence: drawers left open, clothes strewn about, a broken coffee mug in pieces on the kitchen floor. 2 officers arrived within 15 minutes. They took photos and notes, asking Naomi detailed questions about when she'd last been home and who might have done this. "We believe it was my ex-boyfriend, Marcus Reed," she said quietly. He attacked me a few days ago. It was caught on video." The younger officer's eyes widened with recognition. "The diner parking lot incident? We'll definitely look into this. But, ma'am, you should know. Reed was released on bail this morning." Naomi's already pale face went ashen. Her hand started shaking so badly that she couldn't hold the glass of water Gabriel had brought her. It slipped from her grasp, spilling across the carpet, but she didn't seem to notice. I can't stay here," she managed between shallow breaths. "He knows where I live. He'll come back. He always comes back." Gabriel knelt in front of her, his voice steady and calm. "Naomi, listen to me. You don't have to stay here. The Foundation partners with a women's shelter nearby. They have secure guest suites, and I can arrange for you to stay there until we get your locks changed and make sure you're safe." The officers nodded approvingly. "That's a good idea, ma'am. We'll increase patrols in this area, but a secure location would be safer for now. Naomi wrapped her arms around herself, rocking slightly. "The job," she said suddenly, looking up at Gabriel. "The one at the foundation. Is it still available?" "Of course it is. I want it. I need it." Her voice cracked. "I can't be alone anymore. I thought I could handle everything myself, but—" "You don't have to," Gabriel assured her. He pulled out his phone again, making quick calls to arrange everything. Within an hour, a shelter staff member named Rosa arrived to help Naomi pack some essential items. The guest suite was small but comfortable, with simple furnishings and warm lighting. Most importantly, it was in a secure building with 24-hour staff and security cameras. Rosa showed Naomi how all the locks worked and gave her a panic button to keep by her bed. "Try to get some rest," Gabriel said as they prepared to leave her for the night. "I'll have someone pick you up in the morning to come to the foundation. Is 9 o'clock okay?" Naomi nodded, though rest seemed impossible. After they left, she sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, listening to the quiet hum of the building's heating system. The room felt safe, but her mind wouldn't stop racing through everything that had happened. She thought about her grandmother's Bible, about all the times she'd read it for comfort during difficult moments in her life. Marcus had known exactly what would hurt her most, but for the first time, instead of just fear, she felt something else. Anger. Anger that he would dare to destroy something so precious to her. Rolling onto her side, Naomi stared at the wall, considering the strange turn her life had taken. Just days ago, she'd been determined to keep her head down and survive on her own. Now here she was, about to start a new job, sleeping in a shelter, her whole world transformed by one violent moment caught on camera. Her phone buzzed with a text from Gabriel. "Hope you're settling in okay. Remember, you're not alone anymore." Naomi looked at the message for a long time, feeling tears well up in her eyes. Finally, she typed out a simple response. "Okay, I'll start tomorrow." Her finger hovered over the send button for just a moment before pressing it. In the quiet darkness of the shelter room, that small action felt like the first step toward something new, something that scared her, but also offered a glimmer of hope she hadn't felt in years. Naomi woke before her 5:30 alarm, watching dawn's pale light creep across the shelter suite's walls. She hadn't slept much, but a different kind of energy fueled her, determination mixed with nervous anticipation. After a quick shower, she stood before the mirror, carefully applying concealer to her fading bruises. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked out her most professional outfit, a navy blue dress she usually saved for special occasions. At 8:45, she made her way down to the shelter's lobby, where Gabriel was already waiting. He wore a gentle smile and carried 2 paper cups of coffee. "I wasn't sure how you take it," he said, offering her one of the cups. "I got cream and sugar packets just in case." "Black is perfect, actually, thank you." Naomi wrapped her hands around the warm cup, grateful for something to hold on to. The foundation's office was only a 10-minute walk away. The morning air was crisp, and the streets were beginning to fill with commuters. Gabriel kept the conversation light, telling her about the foundation's upcoming events and the people she'd be working with. When they arrived, the restored warehouse looked different in the morning light, more welcoming, less overwhelming. The security guard, an older man named Joe, greeted them warmly and gave Naomi her employee badge. "Your desk is this way," Gabriel said, leading her through the open-plan office. Several early-arriving employees smiled and waved as they passed. Her workspace was in a quiet corner, with a window overlooking a small courtyard garden. A new computer sat ready, along with a welcome card signed by the staff. "I know it's a lot to take in," Gabriel said, noting her overwhelmed expression. "But we'll take it step by step. Sarah from HR will be here soon to help you get settled." Sarah turned out to be a cheerful woman in her 40s who spent the morning showing Naomi the Foundation's systems. They started with the basics: how to access her email, where to find important documents, and the protocol for handling sensitive information. A big part of your job will be responding to emails from survivors, Sarah explained. We have templates and guidelines, but your personal experience, well, it makes you uniquely qualified to understand what they're going through. Naomi's stomach tightened at the thought, but she nodded. She watched as Sarah demonstrated how to organize incoming requests for assistance and coordinate with different departments. By lunchtime, Naomi's head was swimming with new information. She was about to eat the sandwich she'd packed at her desk when Dr. Laverne appeared beside her. "Come on," the therapist said warmly. "You're having lunch with me today. Doctor's orders." Dr. Laverne's office was cozy, with comfortable chairs and soft lighting. She gestured for Naomi to sit while she pulled out her own lunch. "How are you really doing?" Dr. Laverne asked, her kind eyes studying Naomi's face. Not just the polite answer, but the honest one. Something about the therapist's gentle directness made Naomi's carefully maintained composure crack. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared that I'm not qualified for this job. Scared that Marcus will find me again. Scared that everyone who looks at me just sees—" She gestured to her healing bruises. "Sees what?" Dr. Laverne prompted softly. "Someone ugly, damaged." Naomi's voice dropped to a whisper. "Marcus used to tell me no one else would ever want me, that I was lucky he put up with how I looked. I know it's stupid, but sometimes when I catch people staring at me now, I hear his voice in my head." Dr. Laverne leaned forward. "There's nothing stupid about trauma, Naomi. What's stupid is a man who tried to diminish your light because he couldn't handle its brightness." Tears welled in Naomi's eyes. "He changed me. Before him, I used to be different, more confident. But 6 years of being told you're worthless, it gets in your head. Of course it does. That's what abuse does. It rewrites our story. But you're here now, writing a new one." They spent the rest of lunch talking about Naomi's past, her childhood dreams of helping others, the gradual way Marcus had isolated her from friends and family, how she'd lost herself piece by piece until that night in the parking lot changed everything. The afternoon passed in a blur of training sessions and introductions. Naomi shadowed different staff members, learning about their roles and how they all worked together. To her surprise, people seemed genuinely interested in her input, asking for her perspective on various programs. By 5 o'clock, Naomi felt both exhausted and oddly energized. For the first time in years, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The work felt meaningful, and the people around her treated her with respect that had nothing to do with pity. Gabriel appeared as she was gathering her things. "I'll walk you back to the shelter," he offered. As they stepped out into the early evening air, he added, "There's something I wanted to ask you about." "Oh?" Naomi pulled her jacket closer against the cooling breeze. "The Foundation is planning an outreach trip to Arizona next month. 3 days, meeting with domestic violence support groups and shelters in smaller communities. Would you consider coming along? Your story could really help other women who are where you were just a week ago." Naomi's steps faltered. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Speaking in front of people—" "You wouldn't have to share anything you're not comfortable with," Gabriel assured her quickly. "Just think about it. No pressure." They reached the shelter, and Gabriel made sure she got safely inside. Naomi climbed the stairs to her temporary room, her mind full of the day's events and Gabriel's offer. Sitting on the edge of her bed, Naomi kicked off her shoes and looked around the small space. It wasn't home, but it felt safe. She thought about the women she'd seen at the Foundation today, survivors who had rebuilt their lives and were now helping others do the same. Could she be one of them? The possibility both thrilled and terrified her. She wasn't sure if she was ready to share her story publicly, but for the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Hope. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon when Naomi stepped out of the shelter, her small overnight bag clutched in her hands. Gabriel's black SUV idled quietly at the curb, and he immediately got out to help with her bag. "Good morning," he said softly, opening the passenger door for her. "Did you sleep okay?" "Better than I expected," Naomi replied, settling into the comfortable leather seat. "I think I'm ready for this." They merged onto the highway as the sky transformed from pink to pale blue. Naomi watched the city fade into countryside, her nervousness gradually giving way to a peaceful quiet. The foundation had arranged visits to 3 different outreach centers in small towns across the state. "Would you like some coffee?" Gabriel asked, pointing to a travel mug in the console. "I wasn't sure how you took it, so I brought cream and sugar packets." The thoughtfulness of the gesture made Naomi smile. "Black is fine, thank you." As miles of farmland rolled past their windows, Gabriel broke the comfortable silence. "You know, I realized I don't know much about you beyond recent events. What did you dream about doing before everything?" Naomi wrapped her hands around the warm coffee mug, considering. "It's been so long since anyone asked me that." She paused, searching her memories. "I wanted to be a counselor, actually. Back in college before I met Marcus, I was studying psychology." "What changed?" "Marcus said it was impractical, that I'd never make enough money." She took a sip of coffee. "Looking back, I think he just didn't want me having a career that might make me independent." Gabriel nodded thoughtfully. "It's never too late to pursue that dream, you know." "Maybe," Naomi said softly. "I'm just trying to figure out who I am again first." Their first stop was a small community center in a town of barely 2,000 people. The building was modest but welcoming, with handmade quilts hanging on the walls and the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. A group of about 15 women were waiting for them. Naomi's heart pounded as she entered the room, but the warm smiles that greeted her helped ease her anxiety. One woman, probably in her 60s, approached immediately. "You're Naomi," she said, pulling her into a gentle hug. "We've all seen the video. You're so brave, honey." Before Naomi could protest that she wasn't brave at all, another woman spoke up. "My daughter saw what happened to you and finally left her abusive husband. You helped her find her courage." Tears pricked at Naomi's eyes as more women shared similar stories. She hadn't done anything special, she thought. She'd just survived. But seeing the impact her story had on others began to shift something inside her. At the second center, a teenage girl quietly approached Naomi while Gabriel was speaking with the program coordinator. "My boyfriend pushes me sometimes," she whispered. "Says it's my fault for making him mad. Seeing what happened to you, it made me realize it's not okay." Naomi felt her heart break and heal simultaneously. She spent the next hour talking with the girl, sharing resources and her own hard-won wisdom. When they left, the girl hugged her tightly. The third center was the smallest, operating out of a converted house. But the women there were just as affected by Naomi's presence. One after another, they thanked her for showing them they weren't alone. By evening, Naomi was emotionally drained, but filled with a strange new feeling. Purpose. Gabriel noticed her quiet mood as they checked into their hotel. "Too overwhelming?" he asked gently as they walked to the hotel restaurant. "No. Yes. I don't know," Naomi admitted. "I never thought my worst moment could help other people. It's a lot to process." The restaurant was quiet, with soft lighting and private booths. After they ordered, Gabriel seemed lost in thought. "Can I tell you something?" he asked suddenly. "Something I don't really talk about?" Naomi nodded, struck by the vulnerability in his voice. "Everyone thinks having money makes life perfect," he said, staring into his water glass. "But most days I feel completely alone. People either want something from me or they're intimidated by me. Real connections are rare." "Is that why you started the foundation?" Naomi asked softly. Gabriel looked surprised by the question. "I suppose it is. Helping others makes me feel less disconnected. Though I never expected—" He trailed off. "Never expected what?" "To find someone who sees me as just me." He met her eyes briefly before looking away. "You don't treat me differently because of my wealth. It's refreshing." "Money doesn't define who you are," Naomi said simply. "Just like what happened to me doesn't define who I am. We're all just people trying our best." Gabriel's expression softened. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Cut right to the heart of things. See people so clearly." Naomi shrugged, feeling her cheeks warm. "Maybe when you've been invisible for so long, you learn to really see others." They talked through dinner, sharing stories from their pasts. Gabriel told her about growing up with distant parents who showed love through expensive gifts rather than presents. Naomi shared memories of her grandmother, who'd raised her with little money but endless affection. Later, as Naomi swiped her keycard and entered her hotel room, she realized something surprising. Throughout the entire evening, she hadn't once felt afraid or on edge. With Gabriel, she felt safe. Not just physically safe, but emotionally safe. He listened without judgment, respected her boundaries, and showed genuine interest in her thoughts and feelings. Sitting on the edge of the hotel bed, Naomi touched her healing bruises gently. A week ago, she'd believed she was worthless, unlovable. But today, she'd helped other women find their strength. Today, she'd connected with someone who saw her true self. For the first time in years, Naomi fell asleep, without checking the locks twice, without fear clouding her dreams. In the quiet darkness of the hotel room, she felt the first stirrings of peace. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Naomi woke early, feeling more rested than she had in months. She met Gabriel in the hotel lobby at 7 o'clock, carrying the small overnight bag she'd packed. "Ready for our last 2 stops?" Gabriel asked, holding out a paper cup of coffee for her. "Thank you," she said, taking the coffee gratefully. "And yes, I think I am." The morning visits proved just as moving as the previous day's encounters. At the first center, they met a group of women learning trade skills to rebuild their lives. One woman proudly showed Naomi the wooden bench she'd crafted. "I never thought I could make something beautiful," the woman said, running her hand along the smooth wood. "But look, I did this." Naomi understood exactly what she meant. She too was learning she could create something meaningful from her pain. The final stop was a teen support group. Young girls shared their stories of dating violence, and Naomi found herself speaking up more confidently than before, offering advice and encouragement. "You're a natural at this," Gabriel whispered as they left. The drive back to the city felt different from their journey out. Naomi sat more comfortably in the passenger seat, occasionally pointing out interesting sights along the highway. They talked about everything they'd seen and heard over the past 2 days. "I keep thinking about that teenage girl yesterday," Naomi said. "The one whose boyfriend pushes her. I hope she follows through on leaving him." Gabriel nodded. "Your words meant a lot to her. I could see it in her face. I just told her what I wish someone had told me years ago." They arrived back at the foundation headquarters just after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. As soon as they walked through the doors, several staff members gathered around, eager to hear about the trip. How did it go? Dr. Laverne asked, her warm smile welcoming them back. It was... Naomi paused, searching for the right words. It was incredible, actually. The staff moved to the break room, where someone had made fresh coffee. Naomi found herself at the center of the group, describing the various centers they'd visited and the women they'd met. At the trade school program, these women were learning carpentry and electrical work. She explained, her voice growing animated. They were so proud of their skills, of building new lives literally with their own hands. And the teen support group? She continued. Those girls are so young, but they're already facing such adult problems. But they're supporting each other, learning to recognize red flags early. Dr. Laverne watched Naomi with knowing eyes. Sounds like you made quite an impact. Oh, I don't know about that. Naomi demurred, but Gabriel spoke up. She's being modest. Women at every center connected with her story. She gave them hope. After the informal debriefing, Gabriel asked Naomi to join him in his office. The space was surprisingly modest for a billionaire, comfortable but not ostentatious, with large windows letting in natural light. I wanted to discuss something with you, he said, gesturing for her to take a seat. We're planning a new campaign, and after seeing you interact with the women at the centers, I'd love your input. Naomi shifted in her chair. What kind of campaign? We want to highlight survivor stories, but in a way that emphasizes strength rather than victimhood. Something that shows the power of ordinary women overcoming extraordinary circumstances. Naomi thought about all the women she'd met over the past. 2 days, the carpenter building her new life, the teenage girl finding her voice, the mothers protecting their children. An idea began to form. What if... She started hesitantly, then gathered her courage. What if we called it Faces of Courage? Show real women, not models or actresses, but everyday people who've risen from pain to build something beautiful? Gabriel's eyes lit up. Go on. We could feature their achievements alongside their stories. Show that surviving abuse isn't the end of their story, it's just one chapter. Show how they're thriving now, what they've built, who they've become. Naomi, that's exactly what we need. Gabriel said, leaning forward in his chair. Would you consider helping lead this campaign? She felt her breath catch. Me? But I've never... You understand these women because you are these women. You know their pain, their fears, their hopes, and you have a gift for connecting with people. Naomi's mind raced with possibilities and doubts. I wouldn't even know where to start. We'll help you, Gabriel assured her. You won't be alone in this, but your vision, your insight, that's what this campaign needs. Back in her shelter suite that evening, Naomi sat on the edge of her bed, overwhelmed by the day's events. Just over a week ago, she'd been a waitress hiding her bruises, believing she had nothing to offer the world. Now she was being asked to help lead a national campaign. She changed into her pajamas and knelt beside the bed, something she hadn't done since childhood. God, she whispered, I don't know if I'm strong enough for this responsibility. But if you think I am... Her words trailed off as exhaustion washed over her. Still kneeling, Naomi's head drooped forward, her prayer unfinished as sleep claimed her. In the quiet room, her breathing deepened and steadied, her face peaceful in the soft light of the bedside lamp. The shelter suite remained silent, keeping its vigil over this woman who was just beginning to discover her own strength, her own worth, her own voice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, Naomi slept deeply, safely, her unfinished prayer hanging in the air like a promise. The morning sun streamed through the foundation's windows as Naomi sorted through emails at her desk. Gabriel appeared at her door, his face bright with excitement. Tomorrow night is our annual charity gala, he announced, and we're going to use it to introduce your Faces of Courage campaign. Naomi's fingers froze over her keyboard. Tomorrow? That's so soon. The timing couldn't be better. We'll have major donors, media, and community leaders all in one room. He noticed her anxious expression and added gently, Don't worry. You won't have to speak. We have a keynote speaker lined up. You can stay backstage and observe. Naomi exhaled with relief. Okay, I can handle that. The rest of the day became a whirlwind of preparation. Dr. Laverne helped her select appropriate attire from the Foundation's clothing donation center, a simple but elegant navy blue dress that made her feel both professional and beautiful. The staff buzzed with energy, preparing presentations and organizing materials. As evening approached, dark clouds gathered outside. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Naomi drove back to her shelter suite. She had just stepped inside when the lights flickered once, twice, and then went completely dark. Oh no, she whispered, fumbling for her phone's flashlight. The shelter's security system kicked in with backup power, but the rest of the building remained dark. After 30 minutes, the shelter coordinator informed everyone that the storm had caused widespread outages that might last through the night. Naomi's phone lit up with a text from Gabriel. Heard about the power outage. We have a guest apartment at the Foundation. It's yours if you need it. She glanced around her dark room, listening to the rain hammer against the windows. Something about this moment felt significant, like the universe was nudging her toward change. With shaking hands, she packed an overnight bag. The Foundation's guest apartment was small but comfortable, with warm lighting and modern furnishings. As Naomi settled in for the night, she couldn't help but feel that her life was shifting, like tectonic plates moving beneath the surface of her world. The next evening, the grand ballroom of the city's finest hotel buzzed with anticipation. Naomi stood backstage, watching guests arrive in their finest attire. She smoothed her navy dress nervously, though she didn't expect anyone to notice her. Gabriel appeared beside her, looking sharp in his tuxedo but wearing a concerned expression. We have a problem, he said quietly. Our keynote speaker just called. She's violently ill with food poisoning. Oh no, Naomi breathed. Can't someone else from the Foundation step in? Dr. Laverne is stuck in traffic, and our other speakers aren't prepared for the keynote. Gabriel turned to face her directly. Naomi, I know this is asking a lot, but would you consider speaking? The blood drained from her face. Me? I can't. I wouldn't know what to say. There are cameras out there. Just tell your story, Gabriel said softly. The same way you did at the outreach centers. These people need to hear a real voice, not a polished speech. Naomi's hands trembled. There must be someone else. The audience is waiting. Gabriel reminded her gently. And you're ready for this, even if you don't know it yet. Naomi closed her eyes, her heart pounding. She thought of all the women she'd met on the outreach trip, of their courage in sharing their stories. She thought of the torn Bible in her apartment, of Marcus's attempts to silence her. Okay, she whispered, opening her eyes. I'll do it. Gabriel squeezed her hand, then walked on stage to introduce her. Naomi could barely hear his words over the rushing in her ears. Then she heard her name, and her feet carried her forward as if by their own will. The lights were bright, the audience a sea of expectant faces. News cameras blinked red lights at her. Naomi gripped the podium, her knees shaking. A week ago, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I was a waitress at a roadside diner. She paused, took a deep breath, and continued stronger. I spent years hiding bruises under long sleeves, making excuses for a man who told me I was worthless until I believed him. The room fell completely silent. But then something happened. Someone stopped to help when no one else would. And that one act of kindness shattered the lie I'd been living in. Her voice grew steadier as she spoke. I'm standing here tonight not because I'm special, but because I'm like thousands of other women who need to know they're not alone. Naomi shared her story with raw honesty. The years of abuse, the night of the attack, the viral video, and finally, finding purpose at the foundation. She explained the Faces of Courage campaign, her voice growing passionate as she described its mission. We are not just survivors, she concluded, her voice clear and strong. We are builders, creators, leaders. Our pain is part of our story, but it is not the end of our story. And tonight, I'm asking you to help us write new endings for women who still believe they're trapped in darkness. For a moment, absolute silence filled the room. Then someone started clapping. The applause spread like a wave, growing into thunderous appreciation as people rose to their feet. Naomi saw tears on faces, saw phones recording, saw news cameras tracking her every move. She made her way backstage on shaking legs. Gabriel was waiting for her, his eyes bright with emotion. Without a word, he pulled her into a tight hug. Naomi buried her face in his shoulder, breathing in the moment, still trembling from adrenaline. You did it, he whispered against her hair. You absolutely did it. Naomi couldn't speak, couldn't even process what had just happened. She just held on, letting Gabriel's arms steady her, knowing that somehow, in this moment, she had found her voice at last. Sunlight streamed through the foundation apartment's windows as Naomi stirred awake. Her navy gala dress hung carefully on the closet door, a reminder of last night's unexpected triumph. She reached for her phone, planning to check the time, but froze when she saw the notifications flooding her screen. Hundreds of messages, thousands of social media tags. Her hands trembled as she opened the first news alert. And there she was, her own face staring back at her from the screen of her phone. Survivor's powerful speech moves nation, the headline declared. Another read, Viral video victim becomes voice for change. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call from Gabriel. Have you seen the news? He asked warmly when she answered. I think I'm everywhere, Naomi managed, her voice shaky. The networks want interviews. Are you up for that? Naomi's first instinct was to say no, to hide away from all this attention, but something inside her had shifted during last night's speech. Yes, she said softly. I think I am. Gabriel arrived 30 minutes later to pick her up. In the car, he explained the schedule: 3 morning show interviews, lunch, then an afternoon press conference to formally launch the Faces of Courage campaign. Naomi nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. The first interview was at Channel 7's studio. The makeup artist touched up Naomi's face with gentle hands, covering the nearly healed bruise near her eyebrow. Under the bright studio lights, Naomi found herself relaxing as she shared her story again. The host's eyes welled with tears when Naomi described how Gabriel's intervention had changed everything. You're a natural, Gabriel told her between interviews, his quiet pride evident. The second interview went even better. By the third, Naomi felt almost comfortable in front of the cameras. She spoke with growing confidence about the foundation's work and the importance of breaking silence around abuse. They stopped for lunch at a quiet cafe, where Gabriel had reserved a private room. How are you holding up? He asked as they settled in. It feels surreal, Naomi admitted, stirring her soup. Like I'm watching someone else's life unfold. You're changing lives, Gabriel said softly. The Foundation's helpline received over 300 calls just this morning. Tears pricked at Naomi's eyes. Really? Really? Women who saw your speech are reaching out for help. You've given them hope. The afternoon press conference was scheduled for 2 o'clock at the Foundation's headquarters. A crowd had already gathered when they arrived. Reporters, cameras, and community members filling the main hall. Naomi stood at the podium, Gabriel supportive at her side, as she began to describe the Faces of Courage campaign. That's when she heard his voice. "You lying piece of trash!" Marcus's shout cut through the crowd like a knife. Naomi's words died in her throat as she watched him push through the reporters, his face contorted with rage. "Tell them the truth!" Marcus screamed, pointing at her accusingly. "Tell them how you're sleeping with your rich boyfriend for money. Tell them what a fraud you are!" The room erupted in chaos. Cameras swung toward Marcus, microphones thrust in his direction, catching every venomous word. Naomi stood frozen, her hands gripping the podium so tight her knuckles went white. The old shame washed over her like ice water, drowning out everything else. Gabriel moved quickly, stepping between her and Marcus. "Security!" he called sharply, already advancing on Marcus with controlled anger. 2 security guards pushed through the crowd, but Marcus kept shouting. "You think you're so special now? You're nothing. Just a gold digger playing victim." The guards finally reached him, wrestling him toward the exit. Gabriel's hand was firm on Marcus's shoulder, helping force him back, but the damage was done. Reporters were already typing frantically on their phones, cameras still rolling. Dr. Laverne appeared at Naomi's side, gently guiding her away from the podium and through a side door. In the quiet of her office, Naomi finally let out the breath she'd been holding, her whole body shaking. "He's gone," Dr. Laverne assured her. "Security has him detained until police arrive." But the nightmare wasn't over. Within hours, Marcus's accusations were spreading online like wildfire. Cruel comments appeared under news articles. Social media trolls picked up the story, twisting it, spreading lies. Someone dug up old photos of Naomi and Marcus together, using them to question her story. Gabriel came to check on her as evening fell, his face tight with concern. "We'll fight this," he promised. "We'll set the record straight." Naomi nodded numbly, but inside she felt hollow. The shame that Marcus had planted years ago bloomed anew, poisoning everything. She could almost hear his voice in her head. "See? I told you no one would believe you. I told you you're worthless." After Gabriel left, Naomi sat alone in the foundation apartment, scrolling through the cruel comments until her vision blurred with tears. The confidence she'd felt that morning seemed like a distant dream now. Marcus's words had shattered something fragile inside her, something that had just begun to heal. Moving like a sleepwalker, she found a small duffel bag in the closet. She packed only what she needed: some clothes, her phone charger, her torn Bible. The foundation apartment felt suddenly suffocating, every shadow holding memories of hope that now seemed foolish. Naomi wrote no note, made no calls. She simply slipped out into the growing darkness, letting the door click shut behind her. In the quiet night, she disappeared into the city, leaving behind the brief moment when she dared to believe she could be more than what Marcus had always told her she was. The city lights blurred through tears as Naomi sat in the back of the rideshare, clutching her small duffel bag. The driver, an older woman with kind eyes, kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, but didn't ask questions. The clock on the dashboard read 11:45 when they pulled up to Dr. Laverne's craftsman-style home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Naomi's finger hovered over the doorbell for a long moment before she finally pressed it. Warm light spilled onto the porch as Dr. Laverne opened the door, still dressed despite the late hour, as if she'd been waiting. "Oh, sweetheart," Dr. Laverne said softly, immediately pulling Naomi into a gentle hug. "Come inside." The house smelled like chamomile tea and something freshly baked. Dr. Laverne guided Naomi to a comfortable sofa draped with soft blankets, taking her bag and setting it aside. "I'm sorry," Naomi whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't know where else to go." You came to exactly the right place, Dr. Laverne assured her, disappearing briefly into the kitchen. She returned with 2 steaming mugs of tea. Drink this. You're safe here. Naomi's hands shook as she accepted the mug, her shoulders finally beginning to relax in the warmth of Dr. Laverne's presence. Without pushing for conversation, Dr. Laverne helped make up the sofa with sheets and extra pillows. Get some rest, she said, squeezing Naomi's shoulder. We'll talk in the morning. Sleep came in fitful bursts, haunted by Marcus's accusations and the flash of cameras. When morning light filtered through the living room windows, Naomi found Dr. Laverne already in the kitchen making breakfast. I've ruined everything, Naomi said, the words spilling out as she accepted a cup of coffee. The Foundation's reputation, Gabriel's work, the whole campaign. Her voice cracked. Marcus was right. I should have stayed invisible. Dr. Laverne set down her own coffee cup with a decisive clink. That's the trauma talking, Naomi. When we experience abuse, our brains get rewired to believe the worst about ourselves. The lies our abusers tell us feel more true than reality. But look what happened, Naomi protested. One appearance by Marcus and everything fell apart. All those cruel comments online. Tell me something. Dr. Laverne interrupted gently. When you gave that speech at the gala, were you lying? No, of course not. When you visited those outreach centers with Gabriel, were you pretending to care? No, and when you suggested the Faces of Courage campaign, was that fake? Tears welled in Naomi's eyes. No. Then nothing is ruined, Dr. Laverne said firmly. What Marcus did yesterday was another attempt to control you through shame and fear. But his lies don't change who you are or the good you've already done. Throughout the day, Dr. Laverne gently guided Naomi through processing her emotions. They sat in her sunny breakfast nook, talking about trauma responses and the way abuse distorts self-image. Naomi's phone buzzed periodically with calls from Gabriel and the Foundation staff, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. They're worried about you, Dr. Laverne noted, watching Naomi silence another call. I know, Naomi admitted. But I feel so ashamed. Gabriel has done so much for me, and I've brought this mess to his doorstep. Gabriel is a grown man who chose to help you because he saw your worth, Dr. Laverne reminded her. Give him the dignity of that choice. At the Foundation office, Gabriel was indeed frantically coordinating a search. He'd already contacted hospitals and filed a missing person report, terrified that Marcus might have followed through on his threats. The staff worked tirelessly, checking security cameras and calling Naomi's old contacts from the diner. As evening approached, Dr. Laverne guided Naomi into the kitchen. Cooking grounds us in the present moment, she explained, pulling out ingredients. It reminds us we can create something nourishing, even when we feel broken. They worked together, chopping vegetables for a simple stir-fry, the repetitive motion of the knife against the cutting board somehow soothing. The kitchen filled with warm, savory aromas as they cooked, almost making Naomi forget the weight in her chest. But as she stood at the sink, washing dishes after dinner, the tears came again. The water ran over her hands as her shoulders began to shake. I don't know how to be strong anymore, she whispered, her voice catching. I thought I was getting better, becoming someone new, but Marcus showed up and I just crumbled. Dr. Laverne stepped beside her, gently taking a dish from her trembling hands. Strength isn't about never crumbling, Naomi. It's about gathering the pieces and trying again. And you don't have to do it alone. Naomi gripped the edge of the sink, letting the tears fall freely now. I'm so tired of being afraid. I know, sweetheart, Dr. Laverne said softly, wrapping an arm around Naomi's shoulders as she cried. I know. The kitchen fell quiet, except for the sound of running water and Naomi's soft sobs, each tear carrying years of pain, finally finding its way to the surface. The next morning dawned grey and misty, matching Gabriel's heavy mood as he climbed into his black SUV. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed his sleepless night. He'd spent hours replaying every moment of the press event, wishing he'd anticipated Marcus's appearance, protected Naomi better. "We'll find her," his assistant had assured him, but Gabriel couldn't shake the gnawing worry. He knew firsthand how isolation could magnify pain. He'd lived that reality for years before meeting Naomi. He drove first to the rural women's shelter they'd visited just days ago. The autumn leaves blurred past his window, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to his inner turmoil. When he arrived, the shelter director met him with concern etched on her face. "No sign of her," she said, shaking her head. "But we've alerted all our sister locations. Everyone's keeping watch." Throughout the morning, Gabriel visited each outreach center from their trip, describing Naomi to staff and residents. At every stop, women who remembered her warm presence expressed their worry and support. "She gave me hope," one survivor told him, clutching his hand. "Tell her we're praying for her." Back at the foundation office, volunteers coordinated a gentle search campaign. Instead of dramatic missing posters that might trigger fear, they created message boards reading, "Naomi, you are loved," and "Safe space available." Social media posts emphasized emotional support rather than urgency. "We want her to know she can come back without pressure," the social media coordinator explained as she crafted another caring message. By late afternoon, Gabriel's exhaustion warred with his determination. A major news network had requested an interview about the situation, and though he typically avoided personal media appearances, he agreed immediately. Anything that might help reach Naomi. In the television studio, under bright lights, the interviewer opened with questions about Marcus's accusations. Gabriel leaned forward, his voice quiet but firm. "I need to address something directly," he said. "The claims made yesterday were completely false. Naomi Bridges is one of the most genuine, compassionate people I've ever met. She came to my foundation carrying deep wounds, yet all she wanted to do was help others heal." The interviewer nodded encouragingly. "What would you say to those questioning her role at the foundation?" Gabriel's expression softened. "Naomi didn't change my foundation, she changed me." He paused, emotion making his voice rough. "I've spent years trying to help people from a distance, writing checks and making speeches. But Naomi showed me what real courage looks like. She taught me that true strength isn't about power or money. It's about getting back up when life knocks you down, about choosing to help others even when you're hurting." Across town in Dr. Laverne's living room, Naomi sat frozen on the sofa, watching Gabriel's words stream across the television screen. Her hand covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. "He shouldn't be defending me like this," she whispered. Dr. Laverne, sitting beside her, smiled gently. "Why not?" Because I ran away. I left without a word, after everything he's done for me." "Did you run away, or did you seek safety to process your trauma?" Dr. Laverne asked. "There's a difference between abandonment and temporary retreat." The interview clip spread rapidly online, drawing thousands of supportive comments. Women shared their own stories of healing, crediting Naomi's bravery for giving them courage. The hateful trolls who'd amplified Marcus's lies were drowned out by waves of encouragement. As evening settled over the city, Dr. Laverne prepared dinner while Naomi helped chop vegetables, just as they had the night before. But tonight felt different, less desperate, more contemplative. "You don't have to decide anything right now," Dr. Laverne said, noting Naomi's thoughtful expression. "Take the time you need to feel steady again. The foundation will be there when you're ready." After dinner, Naomi retreated to the sofa bed, but sleep proved elusive. Through the window, she watched clouds drift across the moon, thinking about Gabriel's words on television. He'd spoken with such conviction, such genuine care. It was so different from Marcus's possessive rage, from all the controlling men she'd known before. She thought about the women at the outreach centers, how their faces had lit up with hope when she shared her story. She remembered the peaceful feeling of belonging she'd found at the foundation, the sense of purpose in helping others heal. Maybe, she whispered to herself in the darkness, I've been running away from exactly what I've been praying for. Rolling onto her side, Naomi pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. She needed one more day, one day to gather her strength, to be sure she was returning not out of obligation, but because it was truly her choice. Tomorrow she would think it through carefully, examine her heart without pressure. As midnight approached, she finally drifted off, Dr. Laverne's words echoing in her mind. The difference between abandonment and temporary retreat. Sometimes stepping back was just another way of preparing to step forward again. Dawn painted the sky in gentle strokes of pink and gold as Naomi stepped out of Dr. Laverne's house. The early morning air felt crisp against her face, and somewhere nearby, birds were welcoming the new day. She needed to clear her head, to walk and think. As she rounded the corner onto maple-lined Hamilton Street, a modest brick building caught her attention. The East Side Community Center's windows glowed warmly, and through the glass she could see teenage girls setting up chairs in a circle. A hand-painted banner hung across the entrance. Girls rising, finding your voice. Naomi paused, her hand unconsciously touching the fading bruise near her eyebrow. Through the window, she watched the girls laughing, arranging snacks on a table, placing motivational quotes on the walls. Their energy was infectious, even from outside. One of the girls glanced up and did a double-take. Her eyes widened in recognition, and she rushed to the door, flinging it open. "Oh my gosh, you're her! You're Naomi Bridges!" The girl, maybe 15 years old, wore a bright yellow t-shirt with Junior Leader printed across the front. "We all watched your speech from the gala. Please, please come in." Before Naomi could form a response, the girl had gentle hold of her wrist, tugging her inside. The other girls turned, and a wave of excited whispers swept through the room. I was just walking by." Naomi started to explain, but the warmth in their faces made her pause. A tall girl with braids stepped forward. "I'm Tasha, the group leader. We were actually talking about your speech yesterday, about how you stood up there and told your truth, even though you were scared." She gestured to the circle of chairs. "Would you maybe want to stay? Share with us?" Naomi looked at their hopeful faces, seeing shadows of her own teenage struggles reflected in their eyes. These girls weren't looking for a polished speaker or a perfect role model. They were looking for someone real, someone who understood. "I'd love to," she heard herself say. The girls quickly rearranged the chairs to make space for her. As they settled in, Naomi noticed their notebooks, filled with quotes and affirmations. Some had printed screenshots from her gala speech, with certain lines highlighted. "How did you find your courage?" asked a quiet girl in the corner, her voice barely above a whisper. Naomi smiled gently. "I'm still finding it every single day. Courage isn't something you find once and keep forever. It's something you choose, moment by moment." The morning stretched into afternoon as they talked. The girls shared their own stories, of bullying, of self-doubt, of dreams they were afraid to voice. Naomi listened, really listened, the way she wished someone had listened to her at their age. A girl named Maya described feeling ugly because of her acne. "Everyone says looks don't matter, but they do. People treat you different." Naomi leaned forward. "Can I tell you something? For years, I believed what others said about me. I let their words become my truth." She touched her heart. "But beauty isn't in a mirror. It's in how you make others feel, in the light you bring to the world. They ordered pizza for lunch, sitting cross-legged on the floor. The formal workshop structure had dissolved into something more intimate, a circle of trust, of shared understanding. The girls asked about the foundation, about helping others heal. Sometimes, Naomi explained, our deepest wounds become our greatest gifts to others. Every hurt you overcome becomes a bridge someone else can cross. In the late afternoon sunshine streaming through the windows, they practiced positive affirmations, giggling at first, but gradually finding their confidence. Naomi watched them supporting each other, offering encouragement, and felt something healing in her own heart. My ex-boyfriend, one girl admitted. He tells me I'm nothing without him. You are everything, Naomi said firmly, with or without anyone else's approval. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's inability to see it. They were in the middle of a group exercise, the girls taking turns standing up and declaring their strengths, when the community center's door opened quietly. Naomi felt his presence before she saw him. Gabriel, standing in the doorway, his eyes finding hers across the room. The relief on his face made her heart catch. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept, but his expression was soft, full of understanding. He made no move to interrupt, simply waited, watching as the girls continued their declarations of strength. When the last girl sat down, proud and glowing, Naomi stood. I need to step out for a moment, she said, but I want you all to know something. Today you've reminded me why this work matters. Sometimes we think we're teaching others, but really they're teaching us. The girls rushed to hug her, a tangle of arms, and whispered thank yous. As she made her way to the door, she heard them already planning their next meeting, discussing ways to help other girls find their voice. Gabriel waited patiently, his hands in his pockets, maintaining a respectful distance. When she reached him, his eyes searched her face with genuine concern. Can we talk? He asked quietly. The words hung in the air between them, filled with unspoken understanding. Behind them, the girls' voices rose in laughter and hope, a reminder that even the hardest stories could have beautiful continuations. The late afternoon sun painted long shadows across the park as Naomi and Gabriel found a quiet bench beneath an old maple tree. The community center's brick walls glowed orange in the fading light, and distant laughter from the girls still inside floated through the open windows. Naomi smoothed her skirt, her hands fidgeting with the fabric. I'm sorry I disappeared, she said softly. I got scared. When Marcus showed up, all those old feelings came rushing back. Gabriel turned slightly toward her, his expression gentle. You don't need to apologize. Fear is a natural response to trauma. But Naomi, I need you to understand something. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I wasn't trying to rescue you. That was never my intention. She looked up, surprised. I wanted to walk beside you, he continued, to support you as you rescued yourself. There's a difference. His voice carried the weight of sincerity. What I've seen these past weeks, your strength, your compassion, the way you connect with people, that's all you. Not me, not the foundation. You. A cool breeze rustled the maple leaves above them. Naomi wrapped her arms around herself, processing his words. The foundation needs you, Gabriel said, not as a symbol or a spokesperson, but as a leader. I'd like you to come back as co-director. Naomi's eyes widened. Co-director, but I don't have the experience. You have something more valuable. Gabriel interrupted gently. You have authenticity, understanding, the ability to reach people where they are. He gestured toward the community center. I just watched you transform a room full of teenage girls simply by being yourself. That's not something you can learn in business school. tears pricked at Naomi's eyes. "I want to come back," she admitted. "But first I need to deal with Marcus. Really deal with him." She straightened her shoulders. "I want to file for a restraining order. I'm tired of being afraid." Gabriel nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I'll go with you to the courthouse first thing tomorrow morning. You don't have to face this alone." "Thank you." Naomi's voice was quiet but firm. "Not for saving me, but for believing I could save myself." As night settled over the park, they discussed the details for the next day. Gabriel would pick her up from Laverne's house early in the morning. They'd meet with the court clerk, file the paperwork, and request an immediate hearing. The next morning dawned clear and crisp. Naomi wore a simple navy blue dress that Laverne had lent her, her hair pulled back neatly. Her hands shook slightly as she got into Gabriel's car, but her eyes were determined. The courthouse was a tall limestone building in downtown, its steps already crowded with morning traffic. Inside, the marble floors echoed with footsteps and hushed conversations. Gabriel stayed close as they made their way to the clerk's office, his presence steady and grounding. While they waited for their case to be called, familiar faces began filling the gallery. Dr. Laverne arrived first, giving Naomi a warm hug. Then foundation staff members trickled in, each offering quiet words of support. Their presence formed a protective circle of solidarity. When the bailiff called her name, Naomi stood on legs that felt like water. The judge, a stern-looking woman with kind eyes, listened attentively as Naomi testified. She described the years of emotional abuse, the night of the physical attack, the recent harassment at the press event. Her voice grew stronger with each word. "He made me believe I was worthless," Naomi said clearly. "But I'm not. I have value, I have purpose, and I deserve to feel safe." The judge reviewed the evidence. The viral video, police reports, witness statements from the foundation staff. Marcus wasn't present, having been served notice but choosing not to appear. "Based on the evidence presented," the judge announced, "and the clear pattern of harassment and abuse, I am granting the restraining order effective immediately. Mr. Reed must maintain a distance of 500 feet and cease all forms of contact." Relief flooded through Naomi's body. She felt lighter, as if heavy chains had finally fallen away. Years of fear began dissolving in the simple power of that legal protection. As they left the courtroom, the foundation staff surrounded her with hugs and congratulations. Laverne squeezed her hand, pride shining in her eyes. "You did it, honey. You stood up for yourself." Outside on the courthouse steps, the morning sun had risen high and bright. Naomi took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling truly free for the first time in years. Gabriel turned to her, extending his hand, not as a savior or protector, but as an equal, a partner in the work ahead. Naomi looked at his offered hand, then at his face with its gentle expression of respect and understanding. Without hesitation or fear, she placed her hand in his. The morning sun streamed through the foundation's tall windows as Naomi stepped into her new office. 3 weeks had passed since the courthouse, and the bruises had finally faded completely, leaving no visible reminders of that dark night at the diner. She ran her fingers along the smooth wooden desk, still amazed to see co-director Naomi Bridges engraved on the nameplate. "Making sure it's real." Gabriel's voice came from the doorway, warm with understanding. Naomi smiled, adjusting a potted peace lily on her desk. "Sometimes I still expect to wake up back in my old life." "This is very real," Gabriel assured her, stepping inside. "And the foundation's never been stronger. We've had more survivors reach out in the past month than in the entire previous year." The morning staff meeting buzzed with energy as Naomi presented the official launch of Faces of Courage. The conference room walls were covered with mock-ups of billboards and social media, campaigns, each featuring everyday women who had risen from trauma to triumph. "We're not just telling stories of survival," Naomi explained to the team, her voice steady and passionate. "We're showing the world what courage really looks like. It's the single mother who left her abuser and started over. It's the grandmother who finally spoke up after 40 years of silence. It's the teenage girl who trusted her instincts and got help." Throughout that first week, survivors began arriving at the foundation in growing numbers. Some came from across town, others from across the country. Each had seen Naomi's gala speech or Gabriel's television interview defending her. A young woman named Sarah clutched Naomi's hands after a support group session. "I watched your speech online 15 times," she whispered. "It gave me the strength to leave him. You saved my life." Naomi hugged her tightly, remembering her own journey. "You saved your own life," she corrected gently. "You already had the strength. Sometimes we just need someone to remind us it's there." The days fell into a rhythm of purpose. Naomi led morning meetings, counseled survivors, coordinated with outreach centers, and developed new programs. Her natural empathy and hard-earned wisdom made her especially effective at connecting with women who felt broken and hopeless. Gabriel watched with quiet pride as she flourished in her role, stepping back to let her vision guide the foundation's new direction. Their working relationship evolved naturally into something deeper, built on mutual respect and understanding. There was no pressure, no rush, just a gentle unfolding of trust and affection. They often shared lunch in Gabriel's office, talking about everything from childhood memories to future dreams. He told her about growing up wealthy but emotionally neglected, how his father's coldness had shaped his determination to use his money to help others feel seen and valued. "I used to think I could fix people's pain by throwing money at it," he admitted one afternoon. "But you taught me that what people really need is to be heard, to be believed, to know they matter." Naomi reached across the desk and squeezed his hand. "We all need that," she said softly. Their romance bloomed slowly, rooted in shared faith and genuine friendship. Gabriel never pushed, always letting Naomi set the pace. They prayed together before difficult meetings, found quiet moments to share Bible verses that brought them comfort, and gradually learned to lean on each other's strength. The foundation's rooftop garden became their favorite retreat. Gabriel had it created as a peaceful sanctuary for staff and survivors, with flowering plants, comfortable benches, and a stunning view of the city skyline. On a particularly beautiful spring evening, they stood together watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Naomi breathed in the sweet scent of blooming jasmine. "I never thought any of this was possible," she whispered, gesturing to encompass not just the garden, but everything her life had become. Gabriel smiled, his eyes soft with emotion. "You said I'd change your life," he replied, "but you changed the world." She looked at him questioningly, and he elaborated. "Every woman who walks through our doors now sees what's possible. Every girl who reads your story online realizes she deserves better. You've created ripples of hope that will keep spreading long after we're gone." Tears sparkled in Naomi's eyes as she leaned against his shoulder, watching the last rays of sunlight fade into twilight. The following week, Naomi stood at a podium in the foundation's main hall, cameras broadcasting live across the country. Her voice was clear and confident as she addressed millions of viewers. "Today I'm honored to introduce a project that's been in my heart since that first night when a stranger stopped to help me," she began. "The Bridges program will provide immediate, comprehensive support to women in crisis, not just emergency shelter, but long-term housing assistance, job training, therapy, childcare, and legal aid. Everything I wished I'd had access to years ago." She paused, looking directly into the cameras. "To every woman watching who feels trapped, ashamed or worthless. I see you. I believe you. And I promise you there is light ahead. This isn't the end of your story." Gabriel watched from the wings, remembering how he'd spoken those same words to her in the emergency room months ago. Now she was speaking them to countless others, a beacon of hope and healing. The camera lights gleamed on Naomi's face as she continued outlining her vision, her eyes bright with purpose. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving, leading, changing lives. As she spoke about the future of the foundation and its mission, the light seemed to glow around her, illuminating not just who she was, but who she had always been meant to become. "Together," she concluded, her voice strong and sure, "we will show the world what real courage looks like. One face, one story, one life at a time." As the broadcast concluded and the lights dimmed, Naomi felt the warmth of certainty in her heart. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning, not just for her, but for every woman who would follow in her footsteps toward healing and hope. The camera faded to light, capturing Naomi's radiant smile as she stepped into her new life. Not as a victim, but as a leader, a healer, and a woman who had finally discovered her true worth. As the cameras powered down and the last echoes of applause faded away, Naomi stepped back from the podium, her heart full. The foundation team rushed to embrace her, creating a circle of warmth and celebration backstage. Dr. Laverne wrapped her in a tight hug, tears glistening in her eyes. "You did it, honey," Laverne whispered. "You really did it." The staff gathered around, offering congratulations and sharing quiet laughter. Some wiped away tears, others simply beamed with pride. It felt like family, the kind of family built on shared purpose and genuine care. Gabriel stood slightly apart, watching with quiet joy as Naomi received the love she deserved. When the crowd began to thin, he approached her gently. "Would you like to take a walk?" he asked. "The spring air might feel nice after all those bright lights." Naomi nodded gratefully. Together, they slipped out a side door into the cool evening. The sidewalk stretched before them, lined with trees just beginning to leaf out. Nearby, volunteers were carefully rolling up Faces of Courage banners and packing away materials from the broadcast. "Ms. Bridges," called one young volunteer, waving enthusiastically. "You were amazing tonight." Naomi waved back, still amazed at how natural it felt now to be recognized, to be celebrated instead of hiding. "I keep thinking about that night in the parking lot," she said softly as they walked. "How scared I was. How small I felt." She shook her head in wonder. Then the shelter and that speech at the gala that terrified me so much, even running away when it all felt too big. Gabriel listened quietly, his presence steady and warm beside her. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm dreaming," she continued. "That scared waitress becoming someone who speaks to millions about hope? It doesn't seem real." "But it is real," Gabriel reminded her gently. "Every step of it, every life you've touched, every woman who sees herself differently because of your courage." They paused beneath a streetlight, its soft glow creating a gentle circle around them. Gabriel placed his hand over hers, his touch full of tenderness and respect. "Your new beginning starts tonight," he said softly. Naomi lifted her face to the stars scattered across the dark sky, feeling their ancient light touch her skin. A deep peace settled in her heart as she whispered, "Not just mine, everyone's." Together they walked forward into the spring night, toward the brighter future that was already unfolding before them. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.